Shalom, this is Yalak, and I've got another lesson for you today on this Sabbath of May 13, 2017. This is another lesson in the New Testament is Fake series. It is impossible to be Jesus. So let's make it clear, because some people are saying, okay, yeah, that's fine. Jesus is fine because we don't worship Jesus. We worship the Hebrew Mashiach. We worship Yahweh Shai. We worship Yeshua. Things like that. Because people are getting really silly with me and they're getting very desperate. I'm thankful for the ones who are being supported in their mind by these lessons I'm doing, because they are learning from it and finding other ways to look at this when they're explaining the trickery of the New Testament and this salvation through Jesus to other people. But there are some who are getting so desperate that they end up, after they get to their end of arguing with me, they just resort to what they started out saying, something simple like, you just don't believe. Because they can't really, you can't take down the truth of the Most High. And so they want to say things like, it's Yeshua or something. It's like the same old silly trick of saying, well, I don't worship the white Jesus, I worship the black Jesus, and his name is not Jesus. It's Yahushua. It's the same person, people. It's the same deity. He is the same person. He has all the same miracles to his credit. He has the same history of the time that he entered the world in the New Testament. Although you're going to say he was there before, but instead of arguing with that now, because I've already dealt with that so many times, then let's just say in terms of the timing of his entry in the New Testament story, he has the same time that he showed up. He was born to the same parents. He uses the same teachings in the New Testament. He has the same travelings that he did to the different places he walked and ministered to and so on, and the people he taught to. It's the same stories in the New Testament pages. So whether he's black or white, that don't buy you anything. It is the same person we're talking about. So whether you want to call him by a Hebrew name or not, it's the same person. But my lesson here, it is impossible to be Jesus, or it's impossible to be the Hebrew Mashiach. Think with me here, people, that if Jesus or Yahushua is, as we have been taught, a part of the Godhead or a part of Elohim, half of the Elohim where there's Father and Son, or if you put Holy Spirit in there, then 1/3 of the Trinity, or 1/3 of Elohim, if you don't like the word Trinity. It is impossible to be this kind of Mashiach or Messiah, because in order to be Jesus or this Hebrew Messiah, you have to have one main component about you that is inner to the core of who you are, that sets you apart from any other deity or person on the earth. That is, you are Elohim. So he cannot simply be part of Elohim. He has to be all of Elohim. Because for you to tell me that he was the first spirit created, and then he created us and everything else that we see, does not stand up properly. Because he cannot only be part of. That part of Elohim must also equal all of Elohim. Because Elohim, or the Creator, cannot be split up or divided so that he is left with only a part of himself after he makes a being out of a part of himself. So that when the Bible says the Creator made man from the dust of the earth and he blew into him the breath of life, man became a living soul. Just because he blew in his ruah into the man, his spirit into the man, might I play on the thought here, because he blew in his Elohim, or part of himself, into the man in order to activate the man to become a living being, does not mean that he is less of the Creator or less of Elohim. So all power that created us and everything that we see is Elohim, or is the Creator. So the all-power Creator blew in some of his power into the man in order to get the man to be an active living person with the life of the Creator, or with life of Elohim that makes the man come about or come to. The Creator does not blow Elohim power into the man and then becomes less of Elohim because he blew in a part of himself into the man, his spirit. Because the Creator continued to be all that he ever was, still is, and always will be all of that. So because he gives you some of his power to share life with you, does not mean he now possesses less of that which made him eternal, or less than that which made him the only power in the earth. Because I share my thoughts with my child in my house, my thoughts which help to shape and guide my child and help them to learn what the world is all about, help them to make progress in life, help them to grow, and so on. I share my thoughts with them, and I share my hugs with my child, and so on, by embracing my child, things like that. I give a very important emotional / spiritual part of me to my child. I do not become less than a man because I have done that to my child. I have given some of my intellectual capacity, the power to understand the world, and some of my creativity to my child. I've poured in some of my creativity. I do not become less creative. I do not become a person who will search less in the earth for wisdom, and so on. In fact, because I've poured in some of my wisdom into my child, I don't become less of a wise person. I actually gain wisdom because I'm doing something very structural and important in the world by pouring in and sharing my wisdom to the child that has been created with the body that the Creator gave to me. So by pouring in my ruah, if I might say, or my mind, of my spirit and my guidance into my child, I am only rewarded by becoming more wise, instead of if I had gone the other way and stifled the productivity and growth of my child by not sharing of myself with my child. So I also then do not become less of a father because I have fathered my child. So for the first year, I took care of my child. The second year, I took care of my child. The third year, and so on. Every year, I take care of my child. I have fathered my child year by year. After 10 years of fathering my child, I do not become less of a father because I have given out 10 years of fathering to my child. I just continue to be a complete and full father no matter how much I have given out. So when the Creator blew his spirit into the man, He does not become less of a spirit himself. And because he made the man to be able to create other things, look at all the things that man has made. He makes it by the creating power that has been breathed into him by the Creator. But while he goes on and he creates a wheel, he creates cars and so on, he does not become so much of a creator that the Creator himself is now limited in his expression in any way, or limited in his ability to create anything else. So the Creator does not become less of a creator because he has shared his power to create with the man that he made. So he who is the Creator continues to remain a creator and keeps the fullness of his creating power, even though there is someone else now creating. So when I look at this whole idea that Jesus is a part of the Elohim or a part of the Godhead, it does not in any way allow me to agree with what has been taught to us erroneously, that all power is given unto Jesus and that he is completely righteous. He is the great high priest who was sinless, a sinless high priest, and so on. All those things have to be wrong. Because if this so-called great high priest is a part of the Elohim, he must also be all of the Elohim that started out from Genesis chapter 1. He must be all of that. So if the Creator did actually create a second Elohim or a part of himself as Elohim that walked in flesh, known as Jesus or Yahushua or Yahweh Shai or whatever you want to call him, if he did in fact create that Elohim, not only does the Creator himself remain all of Elohim with all power, but the second created Elohim, his so-called Son, also has all power. And you say, yes, he did say I have all power. Well, I'm going to read that for you. But this second Elohim that's created must also be all of Elohim. So it would be then incorrect to say he is a part of Elohim, although I can understand what you're trying to convey when you say that. Because if Elohim with all power creates another Elohim that also has all power, then that created Elohim is really not part of Elohim, but is also all Elohim. And so you say, yes, that's why he said I am before Abraham was I am, because he's the same person. Well, you will change your mind after this. For the ones that is who is seeking truth. Because it would be impossible for this certain man in the New Testament to be Jesus or to be the Hebrew Mashiach. He cannot be all of Elohim and fail to accomplish something very important that the Elohim from Genesis chapter 1 started out to show. What is that? That when he moves in a way to express himself, you have nothing in you that can deny who he is, and that he is the one with ultimate power. In other words, when you read the Bible or the pages of the Old Testament, you understand that the Creator / God of Israel, he would move at certain times to let people see his power. So he's about revelation. And when that revelation comes, like a great display, massive display of his presence, No one is able to deny that he is the power of Israel or that he is the creator. No one. Now, that is not synonymous with saying you will choose to worship him, because you might still love your gods and don't want to give them up, but at least you will acknowledge, or something else might happen, like you might be destroyed when his presence is on the move now, because he might actually be moving to destroy you, which is why you noted that his presence was there in a more manifesting way or a stronger way. So this point is saying that when the Creator moves at certain times, whoever is there cannot deny it. They move to belief, and they move to some level of understanding that this is the Creator or this is the power of Israel. But I find something very strange in the New Testament that disqualifies Jesus from being connected with the power of the God of the Old Testament, in that he used all kinds of miracles to express his so-called godness or his power. But there's one crucial time when he was getting ready to leave, and he failed to impress the people who were closest to him. Let's check it out. I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 28. So we know the whole story. He got crucified and then he rose again and so on. Now look at Matthew chapter 28, verse 16 to 18. Then the 11 disciples went away into Galilee. So this is talking about the disciples now, the ones who were close to him. Remember, Judas had died, so it said 11. Into a mountain where Jesus, or the Hebrew Mashiach, had appointed them. So he gave them instructions. They followed those instructions. So far, if anything is going to go wrong, that is a problem in the text, because they are following all the instructions. Remember, in the Old Testament, when the Israelites did not follow the instructions of the Creator, they were cut off. Something went wrong with their spiritual experience, their spiritual life. Same with Adam and Eve in the garden. When they did not follow the instructions of the Creator, something went wrong with their spiritual experience, with their spiritual life. So if they are following the instructions of this Mashiach, things should just go well for them, especially since they had spent over 3 years with him already, and they know his ins and his outs, they know his teachings, they just understand, right? Verse 17, and when they saw him, they worshipped. So he told them to go to the mountain that he appointed to them, it said, and then he showed up to them now, and it says, and when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And then he goes on to tell them, go teach, to baptize people, and so on. There's a serious theological problem here in verse 17. Because if they have carried out his instructions and they have this backdrop of a lot of time with him, day in and day out learning from him, they learn all the mysteries of the kingdom, the mysteries of the Elohim and whatever. Why is it that they are shown here, after obeying him and supporting him in his mission and being one of the few people to be with him after he resurrects? You're showing all that kind of support in a world where a lot of people don't want him. And the powers that be had just crucified him, killed him, said, get him out of here. Don't even let him remain in the land of the living. You're showing all this support. Yet some worshipped him, but some doubted. You have seen all kinds of miracles. You've even seen him multiply food. He has walked on water. He allowed you, Peter, to walk on water. He has raised even the dead. He himself also came back supposedly from the dead, from death. So all you have seen from this man, this Hebrew Mashiach, should have convinced you as an Israelite that there is no other person like this, not even a prophet from the Old Testament. So this man must be Elohim himself, or a part of Elohim. He must be. He just got up out of a tomb where he's been dead for 3 days. But some worshipped and some doubted. A man raises himself from the dead because no one went and prayed for him. And if you're telling me he is Elohim himself because he said before Abraham was I am, you're telling me that he is the I am. And even if you say he's just a part of Elohim, he's just a son, I took the time at the start of this recording to show you how Elohim cannot become less of himself if he gives of himself or creates. So if he created a son who is also Elohim, that son is also all of Elohim, and he himself claimed it by saying all power. The reason why he's saying all power is because all of the power that was here before he, the so-called second part of the Elohim, was created, was given to him. So the Jesus that rose from the dead, this Mashiach actually raised himself from the dead because he is all of Elohim. So when he said on the cross, Father, into my hands I commend my spirit, however you want to interpret that is your responsibility. You have to figure out how you will interpret that, because that's not something I believe. Because why say into your hands I commit when you are all of Elohim and you have all power? Then that means into your hands all power is there. So you commit into a dying hand the power or the essence of your life. So life is expected to continue living while cradled in a dying hand. So this hand, along with the rest of this Elohim in flesh, died while it clutched onto his life. Yet still, while he was dead, he was able to be active while being lifeless in order to raise his dead, non-existent self from death to pour life back into his dead self so that he can get up and begin to live again. No prophet came and prayed for him. No priest came and prayed for him. He raised himself with his all power, which means power over death, from the grave. You accomplish that, and you have all this history of walking with Jesus year after year and having all the Torah teachings that one would want to have from the Son of the living God's direct mouth. And when you have all that massive Torah knowledge that would make a rabbi's head spin, you look at him perform one more final powerful act of raising himself from the dead, and you look at him and you see some are worshiping him, but you don't believe because they worshipped him, but some doubted. After all your Torah teaching and all the mysteries of the kingdom that you have learned from him, what unleashes in you that inability to believe so that you doubt? When I already pointed out that in the Old Testament, when the Creator moved to show some grand expression of his power or a display of what he is capable of doing, no one could deny that this was the power of Israel. No one. especially when he is showing himself to his own people. They might have still chosen to go the wrong way later on, but cannot deny that this is the Most High. So I find then that he failed to attract at a very important time when he was getting ready to leave the earth the very people or disciples he's been working on all this time. Some doubted. Now, this is different from simply them backsliding or going off into living some other lifestyle, like the Israelites in the Old Testament lived a pagan lifestyle by knowing that the Most High is the Most High and He's got all His Torah and so on that He's given to us, but they're going to fall off and go worship other gods. Because when the Israelites were doing that, they still knew and had no doubt that their power was the ultimate power and was the creator. They simply chose to do something else and worship another god because of some agreement that they had with pagan kings. So they took on those gods in order to honor that agreement. And it is clear from the Old Testament scriptures that while they were worshiping these other gods, they were still worshiping the Most High. They just did it double. They worshiped one idol and then they came and they had the holy days anyway. Or they would do the holy day celebration and then they would still go and offer sacrifices to the false gods. So they weren't denying the Most High. They were simply corrupting it by adding in something else. And even the priests would corrupt the teachings and give the teachings of the Most High mingled with pagan teachings, to the point where the Most High says, "You have corrupted my Sabbaths," or "You have corrupted my name," and so on. In other words, you aren't giving pure teachings anymore because you're mingling it. So they're keeping, because, even the New Testament has the Old Testament as its base. So it uses the truth of the Old Testament in order to set itself up as New Testament, which is what the Israelites in the Old Testament did. They used the truth of the Creator to go on and worship other gods. And that's why they were so strong with it, because if a pagan nation would see the children of the Creator, the children of Israel, doing this, then wow, it must stand out, because these ones would take it to another level. If you could get an Israelite high priest to go your way, you could make tons of money back then, because they were the elite in Israel. And any king from another nation would have been proud to have an Israelite high priest working in their kingdom. Because you can conquer all kinds of other priests, all kinds of other nations, and take their priests by force and so on. You can do all that. But in order to get an Israelite high priest, you had to conquer Israel. Whether you're going to do it by war or by trickery of the mind, by subtly deceiving them with your false teachings, however you did it, if you're getting one of these priests of the Most High, it's like, man, other nations are going to look at you like you have accomplished something that is difficult to do, because these are the people of Torah. So now let's run over to Acts chapter 1. And let's go to verse 3. To whom also he showed himself alive after his passion by many infallible proofs, being seen of them 40 days, and speaking of the things pertaining to the kingdom of the Most High. And when you look at this verse here, it says he showed to them his passion by many infallible proofs. Yet I just read to you that it said some worshipped him, but some did not believe, talking about the very disciples that he had walked with for so long. Now, when you look at infallible, look at what it means. Incapable of erring, an infallible guide, an infallible source of information. Incapable of failing, certain. an infallible antidote, an infallible rule, incapable of error in expounding doctrine on faith or morals. So he gives them infallible proofs, proofs that cannot be taken down, cannot be shown to be wrong. And that's because why? It has built into it the power of revelation. The same revelation that the Most High used in the Old Testament, where people could not see the display of His presence and deny who He was. It does not say in the text in Matthew chapter 18 that many worshipped Him and believed, but others did not believe but worship Him anyway. It's telling you that some of the disciples worshipped Him because they believed, but others of the disciples did not worship Him because they did not believe, because they doubted. How can you have a display of the presence or the power of Elohim but doubt after He displays to you that He just raised Himself from the dead, something that no one else can do? He raised Himself from the dead. Even the Gentile Romans, the soldiers, and the government believed. How do we know they believed in His power? Because they put a stone when they heard that He would get up after 3 days. They believed so much by seeing the miracles that He did all His life and His teachings that this was a so-called righteous man, that they went and they blocked the entrance to the cave so He could not get out. They put a big stone there. So Gentiles believed and blocked up the tomb with a big everlasting stone, like you'd say when you're a child, to stop Him from getting out because of the faith that they had. But the people who were Israelites, who were His actual disciples, who saw everything He did and was intimate with His teachings and His power and His miracles, they could not all believe. What is the use in being an Israelite disciple who has had physical day-to-day contact with the Son of the living Creator, and you've been through all that with Him, but you can still, in the presence of all that display of power, not believe something very critical and important about Him? How does the miracle of Elohim cause you to not believe? How does the miracle of Elohim cause you to not believe? How does the miracle of Elohim cause you to not believe? When Moses saw the bush was burning, did that make him doubt, or did that draw him closer to belief? So you are a disciple who is personal with Jesus, has even shared food and drink with Him over the years, and He raises Himself from the dead after doing many other powerful miracles. That does not draw you, an Israelite from the seed of Jacob. It does not draw you to believe. It pushes you deeper into unbelief. But He just presented infallible proof. Whereas the reason why He presented infallible proof to you by raising Himself from the dead was to ensure that you could not deny who He is. So an effort of Elohim, or an effort of the Mashiach, to make sure that you have no doubt about who He is, fails to accomplish that because only some can decide who He is. But when the Most High displayed Himself to the children of Israel, They could not deny who he was. They simply sometimes chose to not obey, but they always knew. Which is why, like when they're telling, like in the book of Isaiah, they listen to Isaiah. Let's see, I think that might be, let me see where it is, Isaiah. Okay, I can't remember where to find a verse. So, okay, so when you look at even the case here in Isaiah chapter 30, where they're saying, let the Most High get out of the way. How? By getting the prophet away from us. Because even just by teaching alone, just by prophesying alone, the Creator's understanding and His truth and His presence was so strong that it was just in their face and they could not deny what was being presented to them from the prophets, that it was an overwhelming pressure on the mind of the Israelite till they had to be like, no, get away these prophets from me. Because removing the prophet is a way to get the presence of the Most High away from me. So look at what it says here in Isaiah chapter 30 in verse 9 and a couple verses after that. That this is a rebellious people, lying children, children that will not hear the law of the Most High, which say to the seers, see not, and to the prophets, prophesy not unto us right things. In other words, prophesy lies to us. Speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceits, so tell us lies. Get you out of the way. Why? Because while they were prophesying the truth and the word of the Most High was all up in their face, so to speak. So they're like, because the prophet was in their face with it. So they're like, get you out of the way, turn aside out of the path. Cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. So when he displayed himself, even just through words that he was causing his prophets to speak, he was causing his prophets to be in their face as a way to show that he himself was in the face of the Israelites, basically, or right in front of their face. In other words, he's constantly on their mind. So they're like, get him off my mind, get him away from me. I don't want this God of Israel. Just get him out. But they could not. So they entered into their idolatry with him because they couldn't just get him out of their mind. He was all upon their mind all the time. That's why they kept repenting, because he still remained in their minds. And that's why we today can return over 2,500 years later of being kicked out of the land and losing our identity and so on. We can return to the Most High. And some people are returning saying nobody actually taught them. They just came upon it. Why? Because he's all up in your face, so to speak. It's just hidden from you. In other words, he's in your heart. It's like his presence or the knowledge of his Torah is in your DNA, so to speak, if you are an Israelite. So one day it just activates. Somebody has heard them teaching on the street. You're an Israelite. You never heard it because you're not in a place where they're teaching out there. And you never knew those videos were online on those websites. But you just came to the knowledge of it one day. And you put two and two together. Hey, we are the Israelites. And you start looking into it some more. Because it's in your DNA, so to speak, and it just activates. And so the Israelite would be doing all these worships to false deities that they took on from the other nations, but he was in their mind still. They could not get rid of him. In other words, they could not doubt. So they had the truth in their heart, but lighting a candle unto some other god. So, but the truth was always there. They knew it. But they're looking at Jesus and they doubted. It's like they don't have enough with his very physical presence there. You're telling me, if the Creator were to in some way materialize or manifest in front of you right now so that you can actually physically touch him, or let some fire come in front of you like a burning bush, like with Moses, You are going to doubt that his presence is there, that he is real, and so on? You're going to doubt that? But Jesus, the full all power Elohim, because he is taught in the New Testament to be all Elohim, and you say he was in the Old Testament from the start, so then he is all Elohim there in the Old Testament as well, according to you. But all of Elohim is physically manifesting in front of them with 2 hands and 2 feet. And you're going to look at him and see that he just showed his power by getting up out of a grave, something that your mother and father never did. And you're going to doubt him. It is impossible for Jesus to be Jesus. It is impossible for this Jesus to be the Mashiach. It is impossible for this Mashiach to be Elohim or part of. It is impossible for this Mashiach to be the one you tell me he is in the New Testament and in the Old Testament, because he cannot prove that he is, while his people right there can't even find a way to believe him, because some worshipped but some of them doubted, and they are his core group. You just raised people from the dead, you heal all kinds of people, you multiplied food, you walked on water. But to raise oneself from the dead is, in my mind, the ultimate expression of your power. Because when you are lifeless, in order to still utilize power and do something to bring you back to life, carry out some procedure to bring you back to life, you must express the power of life in order to get that done. So for you to be lifeless but utilize life and come back to the land of the living, I don't have any doubt about you anymore after that. If I never followed you for 3.5 years, I believe you now. So I don't even have to have the credit of being a disciple that walked closer with you for over 3 years to believe. I believe you right now. Which is why Torah already has the Most High saying, if these prophets do any fancy, mysterious thing to you, don't even believe. And that's what we're seeing here written in the pages of the New Testament, that he did all these fancy things, but it still wasn't enough. Because no matter how clever you are at whatever you're doing, you don't have the kind of power the Most High has. And if the Most High is declaring his power in the Old Testament so that Israelites are believing, and the reason why he punished the children of Israel in the Old Testament was because they evidenced and agreed and believed all the power that they saw and knew that the Most High was the only power. And then they still went the wrong way, so they got the punishment. I mean, why is he going to punish them if they didn't believe? Then his job as a creator and the God of Israel would have been to do some more things until the children of Israel understood who he was and believed. Then now, if they get to that point and then they want to go and live wayward, then you punish them because you see, you believe, you know who I am and what I'm about. So continuing from Isaiah 30 verse 12, wherefore thus saith the Holy One of Israel, because ye despise this word and trust in oppression and perverseness and stay thereon. Okay, alright, I guess I didn't need that. So it is a real problem. Now look here in 1 Samuel chapter 5, showing again that when the Most High is displaying himself, his power, it's just going to be so clear-cut and so evident that even Philistines understood that this was a God you are not going to struggle to believe and to be dealing with on a certain kind of level that lets you show some respect for him. But you had the disciples who saw Elohim get up from the grave, and they're like, some of them doubted. No, something's wrong with that. Because you got Gentiles here who saw the ark of the Most High. do something powerful, and even they believed to the point where they got scared. So 1 Samuel chapter 5, verse 1 to 4, or to 6. And the Philistines took the ark of the Most High. And we know when you deal with the ark, it dealt with the presence of the Most High, and brought it from Ebenezer unto Ashdod. When the Philistines took the ark, they brought it into the house of Dagon, and set it by Dagon. And when they of Ashdod arose early on the morrow, and you see here, when they set it by Dagon, they're trying to put the ark, which represented the God of Israel, by another God. So it's like they're duplicating some kind of power of, they're duplicating deities now. They're putting it by that one. The same thing as you have the New Testament put beside the so-called Old Testament, duplicating it. But he's shut down the attempt at duplication and showing he's the only one, he's set apart. Just like the Old Testament proper understanding is destroying the false New Testament teachings about this so-called Hebrew Mashiach. So they set it by Dagon, and when they of Ashdod arose early on the morrow, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the earth before the ark of the Most High, because of what? The presence of the Most High. And they took Dagon and set him in his place again. They got to pick him up again. The same thing you're doing when you argue with us who are teaching these things, that something is wrong with the Jesus or the Yeshua of the New Testament. You're picking up again your teachings and reteaching your people in a desperate attempt to get your people to continue to believe in this Jesus or this Yahushua or Yahweh. It's a futile attempt because it's coming down. It's falling on its face. More and more people are coming into this understanding and are beginning to open their mouth and speak against it. Just like the Most High told the children of Israel, break down their gods when you get into the land of Canaan. Break it down. That's what we're doing. This isn't physically breaking it down, but this is spiritually or mentally. We are breaking down the teaching of this Jesus. We are smashing it down. One by one, the Most High is raising up people you never heard of. They're just coming out of nowhere and just start teaching. Like me, I'm not waiting 20 years in this Hebrew knowledge to say I'm going to teach about this. I just start opening my mouth almost right away as soon as I learn this knowledge that we are the children of Israel in captivity. Because you don't need to wait to teach something simple as this. Understanding that the Most High is the only power for the Israelite is not something you need 25 years of Torah understanding to learn. It's very clear the first time you read the Bible, the Creator was working on his own. And when you read Genesis chapter 1, nothing there tells you that he first made another spirit to do the creation for him. And when you read further into it, then you say, oh, let's back read a Jesus into it. Let's back read a Hebrew Messiah into it. And when they rose early in the morning, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the ground before the ark of the Most High. And the head of Dagon and both the palms of his hands were cut off upon the threshold, to show he don't have no arm to save anymore his people who trust in him. The arm of Jesus is his teachings that he left behind, and it fails every time. The teachings of his apostles, of his disciples, that fails all the time. His arm is like his apostles that reach out to reach people with the deceptive teachings. But those arms got chopped off when the so-called people of Israel who trusted in him were slaughtered by the Romans. Because if they're trusting in him and his arm can't save them, his teachings can't save them, how can you just get powerful teachings from Jesus through the powerful apostles and you're still running from your enemies? Is that all power? All power to do what? All power to just believe, or all power to just teach? Every time the Israelites in the Old Testament got into contact with the power again from the Most High by repenting and turning around, they got the power to free themselves from the enemy, to defeat the enemy. They got that power. Read the book of Judges. But here, when Israelites got all power from their all-power so-called Savior Jesus Christ, who is all of Elohim, even though you do some chicanery or trickery by trying to tell us that he is only a part, when really, when we give you time, he's just trying to take over the fullness of Elohim by setting himself up as the only one. That's why he eventually said, I am. Because he's taking in, he comes into the story as the so-called second part of Elohim by just being a baby born unto whatever, into Bethlehem. He comes in as a second part, but as you give him the years of functioning, he starts to say, I am the only one, by claiming the place of the Most High, saying, I am before Abraham was I am. In other words, he's taking the place of the Creator who appeared unto Abraham. No one is going to show from Torah that Abraham was believing in a Hebrew Mashiach or in the second part of a Godhead or second person of Elohim. Abraham believed in the only power that created the earth. And that only power was the one who was before Abraham. So when Jesus got a few years under his belt, then he starts to say, I am that one that Abraham was called by, because before Abraham was I am. He has taken the years to build up a following, build up his teaching, and then eventually to turn around and tell you, I am the one. I am the ultimate one. I am the greatest one. I am the Creator that started out Genesis chapter 1 verse 1. So he attempts to usurp the authority, the throne, the place, and the presence of the Most High in the world by claiming to be Him. That's why you have over 2 billion. The stats vary from 2.2 to 2.8 billion Christians on the earth believe in Jesus, and some others who are not Christians believe in Him. So He is taking over a great part of the people of the earth believing Him. But you notice how few people in comparison trust in His so-called Father, because He's not really the Father of Jesus, because He never fathered Him. More people will believe in the Jesus with teachings that allow one to trust in Him according to some new interpretation that takes one away from Torah, than those who believe in the power or the God of Torah. Because there is a switch that's been happening slowly over time. Only the stump of Dagon was left to him. Verse 5 and 6. Therefore neither the priests of Dagon, nor any that come into Dagon's house, tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod unto this day. So by the time the Most High was done, all these priests start to function differently, because the power of the Most High damaged their God and set a precedent that other people have to live up to and can't. And that's what Jesus was trying to do. He was trying to live up to all of that by saying, before Abraham was I am. But still, when he got to the end of his time on earth, he was still struggling to claim all of that power that he said he had, because he didn't have enough of that power to convince all of his disciples, because he told the 11 to go meet him there. When he showed up with all that power, some worshiped, but some doubted, because he didn't have enough power to convince all of them, even by coming out of the grave. If you are an Israelite and you have intimate knowledge of Jesus, you've washed his feet and all that kind of stuff, and you're still doubting when he's getting ready to leave, so he has to pull another fast one. Okay, well, you just need some more power. The Father's going to send the power. Go tarry at Jerusalem. Don't leave Jerusalem yet. Wait, stay there. I'm going to send the power. The Father's going to send the power. So you see what happens? In the story, Jesus or Yeshua, the Hebrew Mashiach, still has to turn back and rely on the Most High to so-called send a spirit. Because Jesus, the all-power, can't send the spirit on his own. The Father has to do it now. In order to convince you, I got to send you. But the hand of the Lord was heavy upon them of Ashdod, and he destroyed them and smote them with emerods, even Ashdod and the coast thereof. So the hand of the Most High was heavy on them, because when the Most High is doing something, it's heavy. That revelation of his presence is so heavy that even Philistines who are Gentiles cannot deny this is the God of Israel. Yet after all the trying of the Hebrew Mashiach, some believed and worshipped, but some still doubted, because he doesn't have enough power like the Most High to pull off the kind of revelation he wants to pull off to get all of his disciples to believe him. So if he's struggling by the time of his death and resurrection and getting ready to leave the earth with convincing all of the 11, in which case he couldn't convince all 12 to stay with him till the very end, because one of them decided to sell out, And the 11 that's left, he can't even convince all of them. It is impossible for this Jesus to be that Elohim that I am, or a part of the Elohim. Because any part of Elohim is all of Elohim. Because if he says I am, then all of Elohim can only be understood in one way. Qualitatively. I am means qualitatively, I am all of the I am from the Old Testament. Qualitatively, I am all of the power that created the heaven and the earth. I am qualitatively all of that power of revelation that expresses to you that I am the creator / the power of Israel. I've got all of the quality of the God of Israel in me. Yet, I am not able to fully convince you all, so I'm going to turn back to my Father, who's really the one with all power, and let him send you the next expression of revelation that will convince you, which is to pour out the Holy Spirit on the day of Pentecost, because I need some help to convince you or to empower you. This website, again, too long to read, but it's sharathkamaraju.com and a very long string. But the article is entitled, it's by Sharath Kamaraju, and it's entitled 8 Parallels Between Hindu and Greek Mythology. And the subtopic on the page I want to read one paragraph from is saying, the messengers of the gods have similar characteristics. And this is what I've told you before, that Jesus was just another demigod. They made him up. Because it is impossible for him to be the Most High or from the Most High and to have made so many blunders as even I myself, joining with others, have shown over the years. It is impossible for him to be the Jesus of the scriptures that is all powerful and that is the I am that I am. It is impossible for him to be the Hebrew Mashiach that is going to die for your sins because he has all power to redeem you. It is impossible. So the messengers of the gods have similar characteristics, because this so-called Hebrew Mashiach is just the same like the other demigods of history. So it says Hermes is the son of Zeus. He's quick and cunning. He can move between the world of gods and the world of men at will. Now look at that last point. These demigods sometimes go between heaven and earth at will. And you see, look at this now. At some point they go to heaven, or they come down from heaven. Now hear what the commandment says now from the Torah that the Most High gave. Deuteronomy chapter 30, reading from verse 11. For this commandment which I command thee this day, not something in the future, starting at 0 AD, that you will start to believe at that point, but this day, it is not hidden from thee, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven that thou shouldest say, who shall go up for us to heaven and bring it unto us that we may hear it and do it? Neither is it beyond the sea that thou shouldest say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it unto us that we may hear it and do it? But the word is nigh thee in thy mouth and in thy heart, that thou mayest do it. So see what the Most High was doing here? Was he was knocking down the teachings of the other demigods and the idols. Because these gods would go between heaven and earth in their myth stories, or they would come out of the sea, and so on, right? So that's what he was just addressing these beliefs. Don't go after these demigods and these idols that have these myths about them. And so, here's what he's saying here now. The text is saying in Acts chapter 1, verse 11. Which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus, or Yahushua or Yeshua, which is taken up from you into heaven, like spoken of in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 11, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. So he's going and coming. That's what it's saying. And he got Israelites out there teaching that he's coming back from heaven like that. This is a demigod we're dealing with here. This Jesus or Yeshua or Yahushua or Yahweh or Yesha from the New Testament. This is a demigod that goes up and comes from the heavens. So it says here again from the article, Hermes is the son of Zeus. He's quick and cunning. He can move between the worlds, basically, between the world of gods and the world of men at will. He's the messenger of the gods. And didn't Jesus come as a messenger of the Creator? When the Most High is saying, you don't need anyone coming like that, but the word is nigh you, it's even in your heart, that you may do it. So what you need to do is not believe in a sacrifice on Calvary, or not wait for a Messiah to come and die on a cross for you, or on a stake, an Asherah pole for you. What you need to do is get a hold of the understanding of the word that's in your heart, the Torah that's in your DNA, so to speak. Remember it, because I've told you, like Jeremiah 6:16, search for the old path and seek and find what your fathers were teaching. Reconnect with that and find that word that's in your heart, and that you may do it. So do the commandments again. Return to the commandments, Israelite. Return unto the commandments of the Most High. That's what you need to do today. Today. Now you may need 5 years to search it out, but he says today. Today. Now let me show you something interesting, and then I'll finish reading that paragraph. Let me show you something interesting from that Jeremiah 6. Look at what it says here. Jeremiah 6:16. Thus saith the Most High, stand ye in the ways, and see, and ask for the old paths. Where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein. You see, that's why I'm saying the Most High, when he declared himself and expressed himself, they would believe. But then they would have a choice whether to walk in it. But the choice came down to whether they're going to walk in that way or not. But the choice was not one to not believe. Not like Jesus, where you can express it, but still some doubted, some can't believe. Because there's a difference there between the Most High and so-called Elohim Jesus. Because when the Most High is declaring himself to you and displaying himself, you cannot help but believe. There is no option there. You have to believe. That is the power of revelation. So you're going to believe, you're going to see it, you're going to understand it, but you may choose to not walk according to it. Now, the verse started out saying, stand ye in the ways, because you are waiting until more people start teaching this proper teaching about Jesus being fake and he's not our Messiah at Calvary and so on. You're waiting until your camp teacher or more of your friends around you start to believe this and agree with it for you to join into the belief. No, because you feel with more company, or if your teacher teaches it, or if your Christian pastor teaches it, that now you are free to believe. Now you are free to believe on your own. In fact, the way to slip into it is not to wait until you understand all things. The Creator is saying you have to start to stand in it for more understanding to come unto you. So he says, stand ye in the ways. He didn't say go study and search it out until you come to the understanding that you should stand in it. He says begin to stand in it. Stand in the ways and see, because standing in the ways lets you see. You have to do the thing for sight to come. It's like you're on some long journey and maybe you're lost or whatever, you're trying to find the way, and you're trying to look over that tall, you're trying to find the way, you're scanning around, you see these movies of people lost in some mountainous areas, they're trying to find the way, they've been climbing up and down these smaller mountains, and they're wasting a lot of time and energy and food, and they're running out of food, and they're getting thirsty. They can't afford to keep doing it anymore. They want to find a more sure way. If they got to climb 2 more mountains, they want to find which mountains to climb so that they can find the way out of that land, out of that area. So they climb up on the tallest tree they can, and they look, or they stand up on top of that last mountain that they climb, and they look because they're looking for the way to get out. Because when you stand in the way and do do something that allows you to see, then more information comes, then more understanding comes of the way which you should go. So you have to first stand in the ways. Ways there means in the commandments or in the instructions. Begin to do them and see. So once you begin to do them, understanding comes unto you. And ask for the old past. And that's why the Gentile nations in general, that's why they can't see Torah. Because they refuse to do them. So understanding does not come unto them, so they remain in the congregation of the dead. Stand in the way and see and ask for the old paths. So get back to something that's old. Jesus' teaching is new. In New Testament Roman times, that's new compared to what the fathers of Israel were doing and the patriarchs in the so-called Old Testament. Where is the good way? So now once you stand in the way, then you're doing something, you're taking action, and then you begin to see, because doing that makes you begin to see. It starts to bring understanding. And even though you're getting understanding, you are now asking for the old paths. Because why? Now you have moved on to seeking now wisdom. Wisdom is coming into the heart now, is being uncovered because you are asking where is the old past. Why? Because wisdom is about asking questions. You're questioning things. So you see how the trend is going? You stand in the ways, you begin to do it, then you begin to realize that you can now start to see, oh, I didn't see this Jesus' fake stuff at first, but yeah, now I can understand. Yeah. Once I let him go, then it became more clear to me the fullness of the deception. And where is the good way? So wisdom begins to come in, right? So now if I go on now to finish this off with the rest of the paragraph, he goes and comes from heaven at will, like the other demigods. He's the messenger of the gods, because this is the profile of those demigods from ancient times. In many myths, he's a trickster, In many myths, he's a trickster who outwits the gods for the good of humankind. And is that not what Jesus was doing in the New Testament? He is trying to trick the Israelites, trying to trick everybody. I am your Messiah. I'm dying on a cross for you. Even though a cross was not specified to die for your sins in the Old Testament, you know very well that in the Old Testament, Israelites did not need a cross in order to repent. They just needed to return, because the Hebrew concept of repent meant to turn around people. So by presenting a cross before you, and by the apostles of the New Testament presenting this death on a cross and Calvary story to you, it's just trickery that they're using. Because demigods in ancient times used tricks to trick people, to outwit people for the good of mankind. And that's what Jesus was trying to do with his story in the New Testament and his apostles. Peace on earth and goodwill to all men. All that kind of nice sounding kind of story. Narada, the Hindu equivalent, shares all these traits except that he's a spiritual son of Vishnu, the most important god of the Trinity. That's where Jesus came from these ancient Trinity kind of beliefs, from Egypt and before Egypt. It is impossible for this Jesus or this Hebrew Mashiach to be the Elohim who is truly the great I am. It is impossible for him to be the creator or to be a part of Elohim, because that would make him all of Elohim. And as I have shown in only this lesson alone, it is impossible for him to be all of Elohim. Return to the commandments. Return, and a final verse for you. He says here from Isaiah unto Israel, ye are my witnesses. Meaning what? The tribes of Israel. Because they were the only ones who knew him. All the rest of the earth knows other gods that they made up with their own hands. That's why the Most High kept saying they're fashioning these gods out of wood and stone. They're chopping up their gods, or the material to make their gods, with axes. But he says, ye are my witnesses, saith the Most High, and my servant, not our servant, me and my son, but my servant whom I have chosen that ye may know and believe me, not believe in my Son. So when Jesus wants you to believe in him, New Testament wants you to believe in him, the apostles want you to believe in him, and who don't know Jesus or has not believed in the Son of the living God, or however it said it, has no part in eternal life and so on. That's a lie. It's deception. It's a trickery I just read to you about Hermes, the son of Zeus, and the demigods. But whom I have chosen that ye may know and believe me and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God, before me there was no deity, before me there was no other, just me. I was the first, I am the original. Jesus is not the first and the last, the Most High is. Before me there was no power formed, neither shall there be after me. Why? You say, well, people are making gods, but they're not making him. That's what you got to see, because no one can duplicate the Creator. No one can duplicate the Elohim of Israel. No one can. So they might make something that they will choose to worship, like a little idol, or make a shoes and worship it as well. Well, why? People worship stones and cows and everything else. You worship a cross, kissing a cross and all that. You're making all those things, but you are not making the God of Israel. So, there was no God formed before me, neither shall there be after me. Because I am the only power. You cannot make me, you cannot duplicate me. But it's clear that people can write stories to duplicate thoughts about him and use it for deceptive means. This was Isaiah 43 and verse 10.